An Early Life Lesson About Politics by Barry Collin of Ellamore Vale 2287. Narrated by David Tredinnick. With another New South Wales state election done and dusted earlier this year, it reminded me of the following story that has always remained most vivid in my mind throughout my years of growing up. This is a strange subject, I know, but one that would go on to have a lasting impact on political decisions made by me in the future. Up until recent times, when it was finally accepted by all that the female gender was now intelligent enough to have an opinion, it was common practice for wives to vote as directed by their husbands. And of course, this is what generally happened in the 1950s, my parents included. My father, like the majority of men in the Newcastle electorate, were what I would call Labor tragics, for they continually voted Labor, come hell or high water, and this resulted in the seat being one of the greatest Labor strongholds in Australia, with a swing in the order of 20% needed to place the seat in the hands of the Liberals. The sitting member could always rely on the 2 votes from the Collin household, and did not need to do all that much in the electorate to be guaranteed the seat for life. However, the federal election in November 1958 had a little added spice in it for us, as the present long-standing Labor member had recently retired, and the new guy who had won the Labor pre-selection was Charlie Jones. In a previous life, Mr. Jones had been a boilermaker at the state dockyard in Newcastle, had worked beside my father, also named Charlie, and they were good mates. As you can see, there was more reason than ever for voting Labor this time around. Federal election day started off well enough. Those 2 Labor votes were perceived to have been securely locked in, and all was right with the world. However, a domestic issue flared up at home just prior to going to the church hall to vote. I remember the heated words, and I sensed that it was no big deal, but the issue had not been resolved when it was time to walk to the polling booth. We went as a family, and I dutifully stood outside the church hall with my sister Leonie and my 2 little brothers, Mark and Brad, with Brad still in a stroller. All had been achieved, and we started the return journey home. Halfway up Parry Street, my mother made a dreaded announcement to my dad. "Charlie, I need to inform you that I've just voted Liberal. My vote has effectively diluted your Labor vote so that it now means nothing." In essence, she was right. The guaranteed 2 Labor votes were now only 1, and as the other had gone to the Liberals, then it had effectively cancelled out my father's vote. Dad stopped in the middle of the footpath and nearly had a seizure. Mum had undermined him. She committed an act of betrayal with something that was so important to him, all because of an unresolved domestic dispute. He did not speak to her for 3 days. Of course, on a 2-party basis, Charlie Jones romped away with 63.4% of the vote and went on to become the Minister for Transport in the 3rd Whitlam Ministry. So, my mother Laurel's protest vote had little impact. No matter. My mother went on to become far more politically astute than my father, who had tunnel vision when it came to election days and Labor. From that fateful day in 1958 onwards, my mother cultivated a greater knowledge within me when it came to the local political scene, and I suppose, in an indirect way, prepared me for when I too would be eligible to also cast a vote. Mum went on to demonstrate to me the folly of Newcastle continually being the strongest Labor seat in Australia. Any existing Labor government didn't have to do a thing to guarantee the Newcastle seat, whilst any Liberal government actively penalised Newcastle for the very fact of being a Labor stronghold. She quoted to me seats like the electorate of Hume that in the 1950s only needed 1% swing to change hands. Such seats gained all that they wanted for their area, as each party tried their very best to curry favour with them. My mother always made sense about such things and ensured that I was well educated in the going-ons within the political scene. During these discussions, my father sat there and didn't say a word. I never again knew how my mother voted in forthcoming elections, but I sensed that it was always well thought through before the decision was made. My dad, on the other hand, always voted Labor, and continued to until the day he died. That was just the way things were. The end.